criteria to consider when buying a platform. As malicious actors continue to threaten digital experiences and consumer data, we know the technology you purchase is one of the most important decisions you can make in detecting and blocking cyber threats, as well as in safeguarding your organization and your customers. I'm Lauren Horowitz, Senior Content Director at Human. I'm joined by Bryan Becker, Human Senior Director of Product Management, to discuss these issues. So welcome to our attendees of today's webinar, and welcome, Bryan.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm looking forward to this.
I am as well. Also, just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Today's webinar is recorded live, but it will be available on demand after the fact. We'll also reserve some time at the end for questions, so please get your queries ready and we'll be looking for them in the chat. Okay, so let's get into this discussion. First, Bryan, can you set the stage a little bit and talk about why having buying criteria for a bot mitigation technology is so important? How can having some criteria structure your RFP process?
Well, frankly, choosing the right solution for a bot mitigation product can be a challenge. There's a ton of options. It's kind of like buying a new car. Basically, if you know in advance what really matters, that can help you ask the right questions to the different vendors you're evaluating and make the best decision for your business.
Okay, so now let's dive into the criteria themselves. We've got a few to cover. So first, let's talk about the efficacy of a platform. How do we know if a bot management solution is doing its job? Most security solutions make claims to efficacy.
Well, first, let's kind of break down how bot mitigation works. Most vendors, or basically every vendor, uses some form of rules and simple signatures to catch some of the bots. Everyone is checking every request. It's kind of like a bouncer that checks IDs for your application, looking for signatures or volumetric thresholds that might indicate automated behavior. What you want is something that looks at the whole picture, so every interaction. That means something client side, something server side, and then the vendors could use this information for techniques like behavioral analysis, device fingerprinting, even running, AI or ML models that adapts to bad actor behavior. And then you also have secondary detection. That's additional detections that run offline in order to just improve the system and improve reporting.
So how do we know if a vendor is actually using those kinds of desirable techniques?
Well, first off, don't be afraid to ask specific questions. I think every vendor is going to make a lot of claims about the techniques they use. How do they use those techniques? Are they analyzing all of the interactions, or are they just looking at the request? How often do they update their signatures and their machine learning models? After all, this is an investment, again, kind of like a car. What's the point of buying it if it doesn't work to actually solve the threats you're paying to solve?
Good point. Okay, so now let's talk about the criteria of impact on performance and user experience. How does bot mitigation affect user experience? And how do you even evaluate this criteria?
Well, I guess first I'd say, what's the point of being secure if nobody wants to come to your website in the first place? Generally, there's two main considerations here. You have server to server or S2S latency, and you have end user friction. Even a small amount of latency, a slow response can really impact your user behavior, your real user behavior on the site. And there's some solutions out there that will make S2S calls every request, slowing that down. Look for a solution that can minimize that and focuses on asynchronous decisions in order to not impact that user experience.
Okay, this seems important, but still a little bit technical. Can you break it down a little further for us?
Yeah, sure. So S2S or server to server and friction. Basically, this means how long are we going to delay the user in order to phone home and get a decision? And then how often are my users going to see a CAPTCHA, and what's the experience of that CAPTCHA? You need a solution that can quickly confirm if a user is human without needing to pause and check to a central server every request. You want something with less back and forth that's doing it on the side, which brings me to friction. When a human does see a CAPTCHA, how intrusive or annoying is it for your real users? Some puzzles are super annoying. Some puzzles are a little bit annoying, and the best solutions out there just minimize using these types of things altogether.
Okay. So what kinds of questions should people be asking a vendor about these capabilities?
Well, first, ask if they even have their own CAPTCHA. Um, if they have their own CAPTCHA, that means they probably invested in the user experience, but also it means they have better signal. Ask them if they have a feedback loop from that signal. Is the CAPTCHA, helping the detection learn and adapt to human and bot behavior on your site? Ask them if they have a mechanism to pre-authorize humans on the first request, so you don't need any of these tools to disturb the user experience. And then, obviously check the user experience of the CAPTCHA itself. Does it fit your application? Is the user experience something you want? And can you customize it? Can it be branded or changed to fit the look and feel of your application?
Okay. So next, let's talk about the role of vendors in deployment and ongoing maintenance and how that affects success with a platform.
Well, ease of use is where many companies get stuck. You might have bought a technology, but essentially it's useless until you integrate it successfully and get it running on your environment. And a solution is only going to be effective if you can, deploy it everywhere you need it and fully manage it. When you're buying a solution, make sure you know and think about in advance where you expect this to sit within your infrastructure. Is it going to integrate with your CDN or your load balancer or your cloud platform? And if you have many of those, what are all the places you want to integrate into? Think about from both a desktop and a mobile perspective. If you have a mobile app, then you need an app solution that has a mobile SDK. The same can be said for hybrid apps or even more unusual things such as Vision OS. And then think about ongoing management after you get it installed. Of course, you want it to just work, but as time goes on, you are going to want to make adjustments and customizations. And as you grow your business or change your business requirements, look for a solution that lets you start to add in and make these changes to grow with you. And then finally, look at customer support and SLAs. How is that vendor going to work with you? And ask them that question. When you first install a solution, you were kind of looking at all the best parts, but as a security solution, you will need to work with them. How does that vendor manage that, and what can you expect across the lifetime of that purchase?
Right. So like any relationship, you really need to look into what support and agreements are going to look like as you go forward in this relationship. Okay.
Exactly.
And another important buying consideration is management of good bots. Why isn't it enough for the technology to just detect bots?
Well, if this is a new area to you, think about SEO or ad verification and monitoring. Essentially, there's a hidden world here of hundreds of bots, and frankly, no single person knows all of these bots. So how can you even begin to manage them? A good solution will give you visibility and control into what all of these bots are, so you can understand. Do you want to block them, or what do you want to do with them, and what are they doing on your application? And of course, right now or over the last year or two, AI agents and LLMs have become even a newer phenomenon we're seeing. And I think a lot of companies and maybe some of our listeners here will want to have tools specifically to monitor and enforce access to these as well.
So earlier we talked about efficacy and how important that is, but equally important is kind of measurement and reporting dashboards are also key to kind of making the platform widely used and having the findings really be digestible for busy people, such as the C-suite. So can you talk a little bit about this criteria?
Yeah, of course. So, if we go back to the beginning, every bot mitigation solution on the market is ultimately attempting to help you detect and then block the bots that you don't want on your application. But once you get past that, you're going to want tools that help you understand, like, what are the bots doing, where are they going. You likely will have to, or a teammate of yours will have to perform investigations into incidents or things that happen across the lifespan of this product. How does the platform support you in doing that? Does it have any features or techniques to enrich the data using post-decision data? Maybe things that go beyond just anomalies and spikes, but actually like in-depth breaking it down, why it's blocked, what's the bot doing, or literally even like which bots are on your site, not just how many things did it block. Again, you want the tool to just work, but you also need it to support you when you have to do investigations and dive deeper, or maybe it's not even an investigation. You just need to provide a report to your stakeholders about, what's going on and what threats you see.
Okay, so now let's talk about the last criteria, which is that not every technology provides a unified single pane of glass to analyze threats. So can you talk about whether and how buyers should consider a unified view as critical?
Yeah, of course. There are many problems in this space related to the same threats. And I think it depends case to case, but when you're exploring what bot management solution to buy, think about the adjacent threats that you might care about in the near future. For example, ATO bots, account takeover bots, take advantage of users with compromised credentials by just testing leaked credentials. Look for a solution that can maybe help you detect if your users have compromised credentials so you can reset them before the bots even come. Look for solutions that might help you find fake accounts or stolen accounts after the fact using behavioral modeling and account baselining. And then finally, what you'll see, not many, a few of the vendors in this market also offer client-side protection. So help make sure the scripts running on your application are actually the ones you expect to be running, and it's safe for your users and your brand. And then finally, threat intel. Without threat intel, there's basically going to be no proactive blocking of sophisticated threats. And what I mean by that is, for any bot management company to learn about the newest threats, they only have two mechanisms. They can wait until they see it on one of their customer sites, or they can proactively hunt for it. Ideally, you have a vendor that's proactively hunting for it, so they have detections and mechanisms in place to block it before it appears on your site. And remember, when you choose a vendor, you're not just getting access to their tech, you're getting access to their expertise. And again, it goes back to how they plan to work with you. And then look at like the track record of that threat intel team and innovation. And, do they have a vision that supports where you want to take your company and is ready to adapt to attackers and grow with you?
So this piece seems crucial. What kinds of questions should customers ask to understand how a vendor is using their threat intel teams and data?
Oh, well, like I said before, don't be shy to ask. I think you can't get the answers to these questions unless you ask. What's the size and experience of their threat intel team? What is their track record? I mean, likely if they have a track record, they published it, but just in case, ask them what things have they found? And in general, how does their threat intel team work with you and their customer base? How do they share the new things they find? And what can you expect from them over your lifetime with that vendor?
Okay, so now, Brian, I want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. We have a couple ready. So the first one is, let me see if I've got this right. Are there any other teams other than like the core buying team you would recommend working with when you're looking at these products and you're making that buying decision?
Any other? Well, yeah. So it's a good question. I think when you're thinking, most of the people on the call, I assume, are from the security team or potentially the fraud team. But the high level question is, bots are a problem for a few teams in the company, and it might actually be a good idea to work with them. So bots also impact the marketing team. So what we see is bots arriving on a site, either intentionally to commit ad fraud or just as a side effect. But what's happening is they're clicking the ads your marketing team's buying, arriving on your site. This is called IVT, or invalid traffic. And it's essentially eating up the marketing team's ad spend. And I think what we see across all of the customers we cover and our visibility is, essentially 20% of most of our customers' ad traffic is driven by bots, which what that means is 20% of the ad spend is going to bots. We see cases where it's really as high as 80%, and there are some sites that are either lucky or work very hard to keep it low, and it's down below 5, but 20 is kind of the average. So maybe you can look for a partner in the marketing team. I think also we see partners in the e-commerce team. If you're not on the e-commerce team yourself, they have similar challenges as the security team, but it might be framed for them differently as just fake signups or stocking out things that is affecting the user experience for the KPIs they're aiming for. And then sometimes, but I'd say it's less common, there's the user experience team. They don't necessarily care about bots, but they have very strong opinions on the impact that a bot mitigation solution would have on their site. So by solving bots and working with these people, potentially you can find more stakeholders to build a business case. And I think just in general, it's better to talk and cross teams rather than try to go out and solve the solution by yourself, if that's an option for you.
Absolutely. You kind of need multiple perspectives on like what the organizational needs are. Okay, so here's another one. Let me see if I can translate this one a little bit. So do you really need a highly configured platform, or is good enough sometimes good enough?
I guess, yes, good enough is good enough, but the answer to the definition of good enough is where the answer to this question comes from. So different solutions have different investments in their bot detection capabilities, and frankly, there's different threats out in the landscape. If your organization faces advanced attackers, and I realize maybe if you don't have a solution, you don't know the answer to this yet, but if you have advanced attackers, they are going to adapt. When you start blocking them, they're not just going to go away, they're going to continue building better bots until they get through. So I think the question to ask is, what is the level of sophistication of my attackers? Or if you don't know, what's the value of the thing they're trying to take? Because that can be a good indication of how much time they're willing to invest in trying to take that thing. Think about the day-to-day bots on your site, but also think about what sudden new things you might expect. And then finally, indirectly related to detection is friction, as we mentioned before. More advanced bot mitigation solutions typically invest quite a bit in maintaining low friction for end users. So is that important for you? And is low friction part of how you would define good enough? I think that's the answer to the question. Okay.
That makes sense. Okay, this is one I think you probably will have strong opinions about. We have a WAF with bot mitigation capabilities already. Why would we need more than that, a technology like a human?
I think this is a similar answer to the previous one. If your current vendor is solving your problems, I'm not here to tell you you need a new vendor, but I think the question is, are they solving your problems, and are they providing you the capabilities to protect against the threats that aren't there yet? And then finally, do they give you the end user experience and friction that you want? I think WAF bot mitigation solutions can be fine in some cases, but if you have a very sophisticated threat, or if your threat model has the risk of a sophisticated threat, I think it might be worth exploring more advanced or purpose-built solutions.
Okay. So this is a good one too. How can I sell bot mitigation to my C-suite, given that it is additional cost on the IT side?
A lot of questions about cost. I guess the first thing is there a direct ROI? I know that's not always the case, but if there's real money in the accounts, probably it's already obvious to you, but just in case you didn't think about exploring that, that would be the first thing to look at. If attackers are stealing accounts and those accounts have money or gift cards, or related, if you're giving sign up bonuses or some sort of credit to these accounts, then there should be a direct ROI. Second, I would evaluate, what's your next best choice? Are you looking at bot mitigation versus nothing? Are you looking at bot mitigation versus a cheaper bot mitigation? Or are you looking at bot mitigation versus just a WAF? What's the cost difference there? I mean, I think in most cases, nothing's not an option. So you're going to have to do something. And I think what some companies might miss on their first round is thinking about the investigative work that's going to come later. So if your threat involves anything to do with accounts, then at some point you're going to need to support investigations on what accounts you want to block, as well as potentially an appeals process for accounts you want to unblock. And a solution that's more precise and accurate is just going to have a lower cost on those other processes you have to build out. And then in the case of scraping, what is it worth to you to protect this in the first place? What is the value of the content you're trying to protect? And, what's the motivation of your adversary to scrape that? Of course, you want to avoid escalation to the board, I think, in most cases. So think about, what is the cost if you don't have an attack today, or you don't have a significant attack today. Acknowledge and create for yourself the cost of, if there's an attack, what would be my response to that, and is it worth risking that versus paying for something up front? And I think in many cases that helps you build a case to your C-suite, and generally in our experience they would agree with that process of logic.
Got it. Yep. So really, the cost of preventing an event.
Yeah, I think I said a lot of words there, but I think the key thing is think about the second best solution. If you don't buy this, what are you going to have to do instead? And I think that will help you understand if the ROI or the value is the right thing for your company, and also help you start putting together the pieces to make a case to your company that this is the right decision for your company.
Okay, we have time for one more. So I'm going to throw this one at you. So what are the data implications, the implications, for data privacy when you collect all these data signals?
That is a big question. I guess it could be its own webinar. I'd say generally for bot mitigation vendors, and not specific to human, just in general, the more signal we collect, the more accurate and precise a decision we can make. You would want to look for a vendor, I think in the vast majority of cases, that is privacy first. Human is privacy first vendor. That means no collecting PII, making sure that you have full control of your data. And for example, if you are going to send sensitive data, if that's necessary for your specific implementation, like, do you have the ability to hash it? Do you own it? Can you delete it? Make sure there's no data sharing. I guess that's typically taken for granted in most MSAs, but I guess it's still worth calling out. And then again, many, if not most vendors are GDPR and CCPA compliant, but ask, is the vendor you're talking to compliant with the regulations that are important and applicable to your company?
Okay. And GDPR and CCPA being regulations for the EU and California state, respectively?
Yes. They're the most common ones we see companies care about.
Okay, well, Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time today. As we approach the new year, you are giving our audience a lot of critical tools to lobby for a bot mitigation platform with their C-suite. And to all of our attendees, thank you so much for your time today as well. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you again at an upcoming webinar.
Yeah, thank